Jack, and this video is how to deal with anger. Whew, how to deal with anger. This is a big one. This is particularly important if we want to be a real human being, right? I think some people have a fantasy idea that the golden path or the holy grail of anger is never to be angry. And if that's a real and true experience, great. But most of the time people reach that by doing what we call spiritual bypass, which is imagining that anger is a bad thing and that we shouldn't be angry and we should just have some inner peace, and all those angry people are bad or terrible or just they're not very self-controlled, and ultimately when we do this we kind of chuck the baby out with the bathwater, and that's what we don't want to do. So this video is 3 ways to deal with anger, and everything I'm going to share with you at one level is simple, another level it might be quite profound. So it's not like there's a complex methodology as to how to deal with anger. It's more really learning how to be with it, and how to actually allow your experience so that you're not pretending that you're not angry, when actually if you contacted your deeper experience, you would notice that you're somewhere between irritated, pissed off, frustrated, or actually seething, and you don't know about it. So this video is particularly for people who might answer yes to the question, do you not have any anger? Are you never angry? And if you answer yes to that question, I really want you to stay and watch this, because anger could be the path of your development, right? We all need to have a relationship with our anger and to know how to be with it and deal with it. All right, so step 1, as I'm kind of describing here, step 1 is to presence your anger, is to not avoid your anger, not interfere with it, not manipulate it, but slow it down and notice, oh, there's some anger here. I have some anger. You don't need to identify with it and attach to it, but just fully presence that right now there is some anger in your system. And in order to do that, you might have to do a few things. You might have to stop being so much over there with other people, right? So you might have to learn how to bring your attention to yourself and tune inside and notice what your inner experience is. And 2, as I'm saying, you might have to drop a story that you shouldn't be angry, because what we want to go for here is what's your actual experience, not what is your self-idealized experience about yourself. So not where do you wish you were on holiday, but where are you actually right now? And right now, you might be experiencing some anger. So we can call this presence, we can call this rapport with self, we can call this just acceptance of where you are, but try and come into some acceptance with what is actually happening in your experience without pushing it away, repressing it, suppressing it, avoiding it, which are the typical mechanisms that we use to deal with anger. Right? Now, once you've done that, step 2 is you might want to treat the anger like it's a messenger, right? Let's just imagine for the moment that the anger may have something to tell you, right? And typically, we boil it all down, what anger has to tell us is that there's some kind of boundary that is being crossed, right? That someone is doing something that doesn't feel good to us. And for this moment in time, we don't even need to know why it doesn't feel good to us, but let's just acknowledge that that might be what's happening. That someone has trespassed in some way across a boundary or a value or our field, our personal space, our energy field, and it doesn't feel good to us. And that's what the anger might be telling us. The anger is there to bring a message of, hey, there's maybe something that you need to ask for here, maybe there's an adjustment you need to ask for, or maybe there's just a boundary that you need to hold, or maybe you need to remove yourself from the situation, but I'm here to deliver a message. Don't kill the messenger, I'm here to deliver a message. And by the way, this same thing works for all the emotions that you can feel in life. Joy, sadness, grief, disappointment, resignation, hopelessness. All of these things, you can treat them like messengers. They're knocking on your door, and you can say, hey, welcome, thanks for coming, I'm going to include you, rather than bye, shut the door in your face, no thanks, you're not allowed, you're not welcome, because mostly what that serves is to keep the emotion in place. And the way that we want to orient to our emotions, or I'd invite you to orient to emotions, is more like the clouds in the sky, right? Which is the classic meditation metaphor. Is we don't want to attach these things, we want to let them rise and let them have their time, and then typically they'll pass. So another way of talking about what I'm talking about here is authentic emotional experience, which is to orient your emotions like I want to notice them, I want to feel them, I don't want to create too much story around them, too much narrative, be as directly as I can in my experience of them, and then guess what? Mostly they might pass, right? As in, I'm angry, I'm presencing it, okay, yep, I need to ask for something, I've made my request, perhaps my request has been heard, now I'm noticing my anger is passing, right? So that's like a being with process rather than putting a defense over the top of our anger. And then the third thing that will help us be with our anger is actually a distinction I want to make for you, which is a distinction between being angry and acting out from anger, right? So acting out from anger might be things like shouting at people, or throwing plates, or cutting people out completely, right? So sometimes people have this sort of under over relationship with anger. I'm not angry. People are doing things, I don't like it. I'm not saying anything. I'm kind of letting people walk on my boundaries. It's okay. I'm spiritual. I can deal with my anger. And then eventually, boom, straw breaks the camel's back and they cut someone out, or they flip on them and go really angry, right? So if this is you, hey, I feel for you. We all probably have this sort of tendency somewhere, and this is, again, it's about noticing it and growing through it, being in contact with it. So acting out from anger is different than saying, hey, I'm really angry, and you may have to communicate to someone, hey, I'm really angry. This thing you're doing, it really doesn't work for me. You might be totally heated. It's only in befriending this energy that you can actually be with it and deal with it. Right? This is the problem if we have an avoidance mechanism around anger, is that we haven't really cultivated a relationship with it. It's sort of like people who take the moral high ground on something when they haven't really had to be with it. They haven't really dealt with it and looked at it square in the eyes or been with the experience directly. So step 3 is to learn, like, oh, you may have seen some ways that people get angry that you don't like. Right? Maybe people get aggressive or violent, or maybe you've had incidents where you've thrown an absolute hissy fit or been hysterical or whatever it is. That's okay. We're all learning about this, and we're trying to make this distinction between, oh, can you feel and presence and acknowledge and maybe say that you're angry, or say, hey, I'm really angry, I'm going to take time, but I want to talk to you about this, than flipping over into acting out another person. Now, of course, often if you're talking about couple relationships, there's this tendency to trigger and counter trigger, and I'll talk about that in another video because there's a different set of dynamics that I want to talk to you about there. But just generally noticing that you're not spiritual or you're not evolved if you don't have a relationship with anger. If you could just take one thing from this video, it's that you've got to be in some kind of conscious relationship with anger. Otherwise, it's having you. How does it have you? You'll find you're drained of energy, because anger has some relationship for most of us with life force, with vitality, with the I am here, I matter, I have a voice, I have a preference, and I have a desire. So if you're not in touch with that, your life is probably it's more dissipated of energy, it's less vital, it's less real. You probably have issues with all sorts of people that you're kind of suppressing and maybe not even acknowledging to yourself. And that's no way to be a skillful, evolved human. So drop the story that anger is a problem and get closer to it. Gosh, I mean, I always get these kind of strange soccer metaphors that come in. And I remember I played a lot of football as a kid, as a teen, and I remember one of the maxims from my dad was always, if someone's giving you a hard time, another player, you've got to get closer to them, right? So if anger is a thing, or you don't even know your relationship with anger, I want you to get closer to it. Not further away, not suppressing, closer to it. And actually learn that anger, healthily expressed and in contact with, is a vital part of being a human being, and that most of us have not evolved beyond having some need to be in relationship with anger. So that's how to be with anger. I hope this was useful. Please like this video. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. I'm putting out at least a video every week on different kind of personal development, relationship and love topics. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this. I'd love to answer those for you. And again, thanks for being here.